Good evening and welcome to Metro Focus. I'm Jenna Flanagan. Tonight, a $32 million settlement. In the wake of Harvey Weinstein and the sex scandal that brought down Roger Ailes, the former CEO of Fox News and one of the most powerful men in the media, new and shocking allegations by the New York Times claiming that former Fox News anchor Bill O'Reilly, who was already saddled with sexual harassment claims and settlements, was handed a lucrative new contract earlier this year, despite the network's knowledge that the former top cable news anchor had recently settled a massive sexual harassment case. And that's the earlier price tag. An unprecedented $32 million was paid to Lise Wheel, according to The Times, a former Fox News analyst. O'Reilly was fired only months after, but only after his new contract was in place, and after further allegations from other women arose. This weekend, Bill O'Reilly responded to the investigation, denying the accusations and calling the Times piece a malicious smear campaign. No statement from Lise Wheel yet, and in terms of 21st Century Fox, they acknowledged they were aware of the settlement, but not the magnitude of the sum involved. To discuss the legalities and ethics of this all, I'm pleased to be joined by Alan Dershowitz, professor of law at Harvard University. So first off, Alan, I wanted to get your take on the Times story about the Fox contract and, of course, the $32 million settlement with Bill O'Reilly.
This revelation poses some serious problems. Obviously, for the Fox Corporation, there are two bases for suing a corporation in situations like this. One is a stockholders' suit in which the owners of the company claim that the management hasn't been serving the company by failing to take steps to avoid this problem, a problem that has ended up being very costly for the company. The company's response to that is going to be, look, we had a cash cow. We had somebody who was bringing in tens and tens of millions of dollars, maybe more than that, and we had to stay with them as long as possible, and we did the right thing for the company. Whether that will succeed or not is unclear in today's environment. The second vulnerability they have is to other people who may have been harassed. There's a concept called respondeat superior, that is, your boss is responsible for your conduct, and Fox may be responsible for some of the conduct undertaken by O'Reilly.
Well, the two Times reporters who worked on this story recently, just this morning, did a podcast for the Times, the Daily podcast, and were stating that the way Fox initially looked at it is that this was a personal issue with Bill O'Reilly, not necessarily a business one, and that the situation was further complicated by the fact that this particular accuser also worked as a personal attorney for Mr. O'Reilly. So that there was a lot of gray area is kind of what Fox seems to be saying.
Well, gray areas commonly apply in these kinds of situations, but the atmospherics also have an impact. And I think grays are going to be resolved against the company under today's view of these matters. I don't think they will prevail on the issue that this was a personal matter. Personal and professional merge when you have a personality like O'Reilly, who is a very big personality and who lives and dies by his personal attributes on the air and off the air. So I don't think that argument will work. The argument that she was his attorney has a greater potential, to the extent that they had a personal lawyer-client relationship, and not a relationship necessarily through the company. But we have to find out more of the facts about that, and I suspect it'll be complex.
Does it matter at all that Mr. O'Reilly has come out and accused the Times reporters of two things? One, of being part of a larger left-wing conspiracy to destroy him, and two, reporting figures that were incorrect. Now, according to the Times reporters, Mr. O'Reilly declined to be specific about exactly which figures that they had incorrect, but that seems to be part of the defense that is being mounted, is that the figures you had were incorrect, and this is part of a larger conspiracy to destroy me.
Well, one thing you can take to the bank, and that is O'Reilly will not bring a lawsuit. There's no question that no decent lawyer would ever advise him at this point to undergo a deposition about the extent of the conduct that he engaged in. So I think nobody has to worry about being sued by O'Reilly. In the court of public opinion, he's entitled to express his views and defend himself. I commend him for correcting the record. If the record is false, he has a superb lawyer, a superb public relations person who's working with him. They will figure out how to handle it in the court of public opinion. But as far as the court of law is concerned, this case is over. As far as O'Reilly is concerned, he cannot and will not bring a lawsuit. Whether there are suits brought now against the parent corporation, that remains to be seen. And that will be a difficult issue for Fox. They will have some very complicated lawsuits that they could have brought against them.
Well, speaking of future lawsuits being brought against Fox, Gretchen Carlson has already come forward and suggested the fact that this $32 million lawsuit, and I believe in totality it was over $40 million that has been paid, really puts a bad light on the Fox News Corporation.
Well, not so much, because they still were making fortunes of money. Remember, the job of a corporation primarily is to make money for its stockholders. And they will argue that on balance, keeping him made more money than letting him go. The argument on the other side will be, well, you had to let him go anyway. It would have been better if you let him go sooner and if you had taken the initiative. These are the kinds of issues that courts resolve one way or another. There's no way of predicting the outcome of a stockholder suit in which the defense is we did what was best for our company, keeping our most important person on the air for as long as possible.
Okay, but what about perhaps some of these civil suits that might be coming, considering the fact that if the company does take the tact that, you know, it was more profitable for us to keep him on air and to re-sign that contract with him, even though it was costing us exceeding amounts of money through these sexual harassment lawsuits that we were settling?
Well, first of all, I think one of the arguments will be that many of the lawsuits were paid out of his personal funds, and the ones that were paid by the corporation, they'll do a cost-benefit analysis and say it was worth avoiding litigation, worth the publicity, and they thought that they would be kept secret. Now, one of the things that may generate some lawsuits is a lot of these settlements have confidentiality clauses, and somebody may be looking into who broke those clauses. Because when you pay a lot of money, you pay to buy silence. It's not called hush money for nothing.
That is very true. It is not called hush money for nothing. I do want to turn a little bit, though, back to the court of public opinion. Again, as I referenced the daily podcast from the New York Times, we heard Bill O'Reilly on tape expressing incredible concern for not just himself as the victim, as he views the situation, but also his children. And I'm wondering if by pushing this narrative, does that help Mr. O'Reilly in the court of public opinion, which is where if he's going to rebuild his career, he needs to have support?
No, I think it hurts his argument. The answer to it is obvious. You're the one who hurt your children. You shouldn't have done that. As far as the tape recordings are concerned, remember there's also this one secret tape recording that nobody has yet heard. We've heard descriptions of it. A tape recording in which he is on the phone with one of the women and they're engaged. He's engaged in very inappropriate talk. That tape is said to exist. People have heard it, but we've never heard it. And if he ever were to bring a lawsuit, almost certainly that tape would have to be released to the public, and that would destroy even further his credibility in his career. So I'm not sure that he's being wise by going on the air and pointing to his children. I think the response is going to be, if you have children, you don't engage in this kind of conduct.
All right. Well, Mr. Dershowitz, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the show. I do have one final question for you, and that is, if you were representing Mr. O'Reilly, either in a civil case or in any other one, perhaps criminal, what would you advise?
I think at
this point,
I think at this point, I would advise him to disappear from public view, not to make any further comments, and to let the story die a natural death.
All right. Well, that is all very insightful. Listen, again, Mr. Dershowitz, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this program. We really appreciate your insight into the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.